Greetings to all my fellow Earthlings tuning in. My name is Doogsley Doogertons. I am your humble host, and welcome back to another episode of the Lazy Phasey Oddcast of Wonder and Whimsy. I am happy to be here as usual, and I hope that you are happy to tune in. If this is your first time here, welcome. It's nice to meet you. We have a lot to talk about today, so I shall not waste any time, but I did want to wish everyone a happy Friday the 13th. The Libra moon is just a sliver in our sky, ready to enter the new lunation tomorrow on October 14th with a solar eclipse in Libra. Pretty exciting. I hope your Virgo lunation went well. Maybe take a second and pause and reflect upon the last 29 days of your life and think about how that cycle went for you. I feel like a lot of that cycle dealt with questing and putting our mind to our ideas and our dreams and really creating them into a reality, just like how Virgo kind of takes the wheat harvested by Geminis and bakes it all into bread. This alchemization that happens during a Virgo lunation cycle is always so productive. And in this case too, I think we were asked to really start putting ourselves out there and really claiming our dreams and our ideas and our achievements and goals and giving them weight tangibly in the world. So it was likely a pretty hard-working lunation for you. All I can say, mine was very weird. Not necessarily in a bad way, but there was a lot of firsts, and there was also a lot of revisiting old energies, and it has given me much to ponder, at least me going into this lunation. And speaking of which, we're going to continue to see the Plutonian influence from last lunation enter this lunation, but tenfold, I feel. We're going to be entering a very Pluto moment and lunation, and especially during the October stretch of this lunation cycle. We're also going to be seeing some exciting shifts in the sky, like Saturn stationing direct. We're going to see Venus enter Libra, which is going to be excellent and delicious. We're going to see Mercury ping pong to Scorpio and then to Sagittarius near the end of the lunation. We're greeted by a bubbly and fun and delightful Samhain. And of course, we will be met with an incredibly dense solar and lunar eclipse. Now, before we get into this lunation, I want to talk a little bit about eclipse season, what eclipses are, why it matters, why people freak out when they pop up, and all that nonsense. So I suppose where I want to start is eclipses come in pairs. There will always be a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse holding hands, happening one after the other. And solar eclipses always happen on new moons. Lunar eclipses always happen on full moons. What happens during a solar eclipse is that the moon kind of nestles itself between the sun and the earth. So it just takes the sun's energy head on. And that's why we get, all of a sudden, the sun starts to fade in the sky. The crickets start to come out. The bullfrogs start to sing again, thinking that nighttime is coming. And then all of a sudden, it becomes so dark on the earth. It's really amazing. I don't know if you in particular listening to this have ever experienced a solar eclipse, but I remember there was one a few years ago, I believe, on the first day of summer on Litha, and it was incredible. Such a powerful, strange, eerie energy that comes out of a particularly potent solar eclipse. Witnessing it is pretty amazing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are lunar eclipses. As opposed to the moon blocking off the sun's rays, this time the earth gets between the sun and the moon, and it cuts off the light of the sun from hitting the moon, because of course the moon doesn't radiate its own glow. She simply reflects the light of the sun. So it looks as if the moon disappears in the sky, which is also amazing to behold because that happens during full moons. So all of a sudden you'll see this big, bright, beautiful moon in the sky, and then that's when you're gonna see like that reddening of the Earth's shadow sort of collapsing over it, and that's when we get the amazing like blood moon / dark moon in the sky during a full moon. Also a very bizarre experience to behold. And I mean, there's just like such a quiet yet potent form of magic that happens during eclipses. And it's interesting because they happen about every 6 months or so, and yet they still just hit us so hard astrologically. And once again, similar to like how full moons are a part of the psyche of people who aren't even in tune with astrology, I feel like eclipses are another astronomical phenomenon that grabs the average non-magical person's attention, and for good reason. Shocking appearance aside, I do think that there's some merit to the entirety of the sun's energy getting cut off by the moon during solar eclipses, and then the moon no longer getting the power from the sun during a lunar eclipse. I'm going to be talking about the intricacies of solar eclipses in particular and lunar eclipses in particular once we hit those parts of the lunation, but I kind of wanted to give those basics first. And as you can see, the name of this episode is the Eclipse Season Survival Guide, so I did want to give some of my personal rules that I try to follow during eclipse season that I've just gathered over the years from experience and, just thinking about what an eclipse represents and the lessons that they offer and how to best embrace them and be prepared for them as they come, I suppose. So, and also just not setting myself up for failure during eclipse season because it is just a chaotic time in general. Although life must go on and sometimes I can't make decisions like, don't overpack my schedule during eclipse season, which is one of my little rules that I have for myself. But sometimes you can't not do that. You have to do what you have to do as a human. I do think that and rules sound like so rigid. It's just like guidelines, I guess. These are my eclipse guidelines, my little reminders to myself as we approach eclipse season every year to call in and utilize its magic and lessons and wisdom with as few distractions as possible. So here are my guidelines. Eclipses aren't all inherently good or bad, okay? I hear this so much. I hear a lot of fear-mongering with eclipse season, but I also hear a lot of gassing up of eclipse season, and I don't think that's fair necessarily in either direction because eclipse seasons, first of all, span over a long period of time. I feel like there's like a 90-day period maybe of just the aftermath and the after currents of eclipse season. Even like the rumbling and the building up to eclipses can also call in new striking eclipse energy, which if I had to give eclipse energy like one or two words, it would be the ending and beginning of cycles. That's a lot of words. And like letting go, but also calling in. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be like this push-pull because it comes in pairs, it comes in twos. You can't have one without the other. You can't delete without filling it up again with something new. Of course, there's always pros and cons to letting go and then calling in. You have to let the eclipse do its eclipse thing before you decide it's like, that was a good eclipse or that was a bad eclipse. Something that I've heard before, and I love this phrasing of it, is all eclipses have a second act. Like, it never quite ends when you think it does because, and this is another guideline of eclipse energy, which is it is inherently chaotic. Okay, this is when shit is most off the rails and unpredictable, I feel, astrologically. And that's because the moon and sun are just in weakened, awkward states during this time. Or especially strengthened states, depending upon if it's the solar or lunar eclipse. But either way, things are widdershins and flipped upside their heads and upside down and all helter-skelter. So you really gotta just let the eclipse. And that's why another personal rule of mine is to not participate in any kinds of magical practice that involves things like manifesting or like conjuring, because the energies in the air is just, they're going everywhere. They're like fireworks, and they're sputtering and sprinkling and like spitting fire and ice all at the same time, just like in two radical different directions. directions, but also on opposite sides that they should be. It feels like everything is ass up during eclipse. So when we try to call in energy and do manifestation magic during an eclipse, I feel like instead of us pulling the rabbit from our own magician's hat, it's like we're given a random magician's hat and, oh, so you manifested money? Well, maybe you didn't specify how, why, and no amount of explaining would ever be good enough for an eclipse anyway, because eclipses are all about finding the odd way out, the road less traveled, or maybe the road most traveled, like you just can't depend on that. And so instead of pulling out the $1 million you want from your new magician's hat, you end up pulling from another hat and end up receiving a bunch of money, but in a really unfortunate way, like through an accident or through lawyer stuff, you know what I mean? And that's especially doomer, but like, I wish I had time to tell some eclipse stories. I really don't. I'm telling you, this episode is filled to the brim, but one of these days I'd love to have just a witch story time chat where I can talk about some of the silly shit that's happened during eclipses, and especially when I used to fuck around and find out magically during eclipses. There was some irreparable damage that has happened during this time for me, so when it comes to doing magic during eclipses, you have to tread very, very, very carefully, and in fact, I often just urge people to not participate in at all unless they want to embrace the chaos witchery side of it, which, speaking of which, shout out to the chaos witches who tune in and observe this eclipse season, because this is such a wonderful time for you guys. Truly. Another thing I try to do during eclipse season is to not try to overpack my schedule and try not to, I just don't like anything being in stone during eclipse season. I just like to more so flow in and out of wherever I'm being directed by the universe. And yes, this could be non-negotiable at times. Sometimes, of course, we all have jobs, we all have places to go and people to see at specific times, right? But when it comes to things that are in my power, I tend to leave things a little loosey-goosey during eclipse season because it's just what works best for me. And I think a lot of other people too, and a lot of other witches I've talked to, but that's my mileage at the very least. And similarly to not having too busy of a schedule, I also try to not make many ultimatums or big sweeping actions during this time. This isn't the time to put a flag in the ground and declare shit. This is a time to flow and just be one with the wisdom of the sky and the stars and the moon and the sun and all of its weird awkwardness. When I receive wisdom from eclipses, I tend to feel it's pretty non-negotiable. It's pretty direct, in my opinion. I don't know. When the wisdom I receive during eclipses have been the least wrong and least misguided that I've received, but it's also been the most direct and pretty unapologetic and unavoidable. So there's a bit of burning, I think, that happens in eclipse season. There's a lot of raw tenderness that happens because we are faced with these hard truths that would normally be ping-ponged in maybe a more subtle way. And that's the thing too, because I always describe astrology as very subtle. This is subtle magics. This is quiet physics of the world, right? But then eclipse season happens, and I find that eclipses are very direct. They get right to the point, and if you don't participate, then, I don't know, it sounds like you're going to be stuck in the cycle for another 6 months, This is to me is a big cycle opener, and also in the same vein, a cycle ender. The solar eclipse is all about opening doors, and the lunar eclipse is all about closing doors. And the final thing I want to talk about with eclipse season, speaking of that as well, is, and this is a personal experience of mine, but I'm sure many people will be quick to agree that this is not an uncommon experience, but I always expect during eclipse season for at least one person to exit my life in some way, or for someone to enter my life. I tend to see eclipses as a revolving door, and people who no longer align with my energy tend to see themselves out during this time. I also have to equally be open to those who come in and reveal themselves to me during these time periods. And so eclipses require a lot of discernment and a lot of clarity. And especially an eclipse that's happening during this time period, right around Samhain. The veil is thin. There's a lot of trickery afoot. I think that the ancestors and spirits and fae, they're all out to play and say hello and influence and play their little chess game, speaking in riddles, speaking in rhymes, speaking in dreams to you, right? That's like another reason why I don't like to do magic that there's so much magic around us during eclipse season that it's like I really don't need to throw my own in the mix. I'd rather just like embrace and gobble up whatever's being given to me. But once again, those are just my personal rules. It's not that deep. Ultimately, you can do whatever the hell you want, but if you talk to any magical practitioner that's familiar with eclipse season, I'm sure we'd have very similar lists. And that's only scratching the surface, because we're going to talk about these eclipses in particular and what they represent and how they will apply to you and your life. So buckle up. Get a nice drink. We're in the heart of autumn at the moment, so maybe something warm and fuzzy. I got a yerba mate today. Mint flavored, pretty delicious. And let's get started. So as previously mentioned, this lunation begins on October 14th. In my notes I put October 14th, ND instead of TH. Grammar jump scare. And this will be our solar eclipse in Libra. Now, I want to immediately talk about how this eclipse is interacting with other planets at this time. One thing to note also with eclipses is that they always line up with the nodes. You know, when the nodes become conjunct with our luminaries, that an eclipse is here or on its way. So in this case, this solar eclipse is on the side of the south node. The south node is a placement in the sky that denotes where we are looking to grow from, I suppose. That was kind of a sloppy sentence. By contrast, the north node is where we are trying to achieve and embody and master the energies of where it sits in this lifetime. We're getting a little reincarnated here, but in theory, the south node is what we conquered in our previous lifetime. So we no longer have to think about that as like a big, almost like karmic goal within us. So instead we focus most of our attention on the north node, but of course the south node is still important because it teaches us how to comfort and soothe ourselves. It's familiar to us and therefore still has presence and power in a chart. Also at the same time, I think that a lot of us can lean too hard into the south node and lose ourselves and lose sight of our mission, our goal, our big dream that maybe we don't even consciously know or understand, right? The number one rule of eclipses is letting go, starting fresh, and just allowing cycles to end so that new cycles can begin. This is the core of eclipse season. It is revolving doors all the way down, okay? When the solar eclipse works with the south node, I feel like that this is a very potent form of exiting the comfort zone by force. This is a placement that's often characterized by losing or lacking something important and needing to improvise, needing to come up with something really fast, really quick to fill up this space that's gone. Eclipses, I feel, are all about going with the flow and letting things that are at the end of its life cycle end. And because this eclipse is happening in Libra, I want to direct you to your chart and see what house is Libra in your chart, because I think that's going to give a really big insight on some of these new cycles that are going to be beginning and also the cycles that you're going to be pushing out and ending. And Libra aspects of life are things like sociality and harmony, beauty, diplomacy, being able to see other people's point of views, maybe even a little bit of people pleasing. Maybe you're getting over that, those types of ideals. At the same time, the solar eclipse is opposite Chiron in Aries. We've talked about Chiron quite a few times here, the unhealable wound, this part of us that we just consistently struggle with. To me, I see a solar eclipse interacting with Chiron, and I think that this is such a revealing of our inner chronic wounds. So immediately we're being asked to get pushed out of the comfort zone into the fray of it all. And then Chiron comes in and is also revealing all of our wounds and excruciatingly painful stuff that we've been trying to run from, or things that we've been constantly running into and we just can't conquer. And so it shows up once again. But honestly, this energy is right at home during eclipse season, because eclipse season's usually shocking and rapid and has tons of revelations and shifts. And so Chiron popping up here is just going to give a little bit more of that frustrated emotional edge of, why don't I just get this? Why am I still in this cycle? Why is this spiral still spiraling? And I'm still not learning these lessons, right? Once again, just look and see where this eclipse is falling in your chart. You might just be hitting your fucking limit here. Yeah, you might need a new cycle and new beginnings with new environments, new people, new mindsets. But here's where a lot of people get stuck with eclipses, in my opinion. So much of eclipses are about letting go. And I think that a lot of people have many fears of letting go, because things start to pop up in your soul that's like, so what will happen if I stop maintaining this energy output that I'm putting towards this person, place, thing idea, and I stop supplying this person, place, thing idea with attention? Will it survive without me? Will this continue to thrive and do its own thing without my presence there? And this is such also a Libran solar eclipse mindset, right? Because Libra energy is so content with keeping the whole room buzzing and happy, being a good host and making sure that you're showing up and creating a sense of balance and harmony with those around them. Libra's a very social sign, right? Okay, so I stop going to the corner of the room because the people there aren't being very responsive to my bubbly personality, and then all of a sudden you turn around after not visiting them after a few traipses around the room, and that people in the corner are gone. And it's like, but was it actually a bad thing that they left at all? Because they were not receptive to your energy, and now there's even more room for someone else who's a better fit to enter your little Libra party, your little party planning moment, right? Eclipses are here to remind us that endings are not just endings, but also new beginnings. And maybe we can go as far as to say fresh starts, right? Like a completely fresh slate. And that's why eclipses are phoenix-like in energy, in my opinion. It's all about taking the ashes of what has been burnt away and what no longer is sustainable, and using the soot to cauterize the wound and help it become an even stronger patch of land, a stronger patch of skin to withstand an even tougher battle in the future, right? Which is painful. It's not fun, but of course it's necessary. Of course we have to go through this. Like it's a natural part of life, and eclipses are just here to kind of rip the band-aid off of some of these situations that have just been around for a little bit too long. Because when you let go, you allow the energy you were holding on to resume a more like naturally balanced and harmonious state. You know what I mean? Have you ever been friends with someone and like you two weren't really good for each other, but maybe you two were like childhood friends, and so it never felt like there was a right or perfect time to stop being friends with them? But you know, as you got older and older, and like you met in like kindergarten, but now it's like 5th grade, and back in kindergarten you two were like playing Pokemon together, but then in 5th grade they like started playing like Xbox. This is so stupid. And doing other things and like going outside, but you're still like enjoying your time playing Pokemon and like enjoying Nintendo games. But when they come and hang out with you, they're still playing Nintendo games, but they're not really having fun, and you're not really having fun because they're not really having fun. But then one day, like you just kind of start to let the calls go to voicemail and you don't start reaching out to them. And then the next time you see them, they're glowing and they're hanging out with all their Xbox friends. And you're like, oh, well, that's good for them. Because even though I grieve the fact that we are no longer good fits for each other, I'm happy for them that they were able to find a better fit for them and be able to grow into this new space that has space for them. Because listen, I'm a Nintendo girl. I got no space for Xbox subhuman freaks, okay? I'm just kidding. But like, I probably couldn't have chose a worse example, but I hope that makes sense. Eclipses, once again, this is not a time to force anything. Eclipses have a habit of spitting energy right back at you. Sort of like with the money thing I explained earlier, where, ooh, I'm gonna manifest money. And it's like, okay, here's the money because you won a lawsuit for a life-altering injury. And once again, even if you are so specific, or if you do a multi-step process, like the luminaries are physically and energetically blocking and canceling each other out. And their light. They're considered inauspicious during this time. And the sun is where we get that fire energy of magic, of conjuring. And then the moon as well. And, two sides of the same coin type beat, right? These are raw, authentic energy geysers that we're meant to flow through rather than control or manipulate. We're coming back to basics with eclipses, and the basics are chaos. Life is chaos. Life is unpredictable. Life is not locked. Although astrology can help us sort of stay even-keeled, focused, excited, magical on this path, eclipses are when the road signs are flipped turnways for fun, and they're a little bit like tests, I feel. A little bit of like a big checkpoint for all of us to see if we've been really committed to the rules and the magic that we've set for ourselves. And if we can actually trust ourselves during this time. The intuition has never been stronger than during an eclipse, because the energy in the sky, the natural magic of an eclipse is rooted in a helter-skelter fish out of water feeling, which is just as magical and potent as a fish in water. It's a completely new type of flow, and if we keep trying to put the fish in the water, it's not the time for the fish to be in the water. The fish is just gonna keep popping out. It's just gonna keep popping out because everything is backwards and silly. Their instincts are confused, and we just have to respect that instead of trying to control it and trying to make it and mold the eclipse into exactly what we want it to be. We have to let the eclipse. And there's just so much magic in the air organically during an eclipse. It's just a completely new type of energy that we're not used to. So instead of us trying to play witch and manipulate it and manifest and move shit around, why don't we tap in, tune in, listen, and receive instead? I think that's where we get the most out of an eclipse, personally. Another thing that's also happening for this solar eclipse is that it will be squaring Pluto in Capricorn later on in the day. And this is the first peak in Plutonian nonsense of this cycle. Because here's the thing about Plutonian energy. Pluto rules things like intrigue, power, control, agency, terror, transformation, secrets, okay, like the domain of all things shrouded and hidden. Something that's interesting to me, and I was just thinking about this the other day, was that power itself is shrouded in mystery, because it's always in power's best interest to look like something else or conceal itself, right? Because oftentimes people can't get away with, let's say they want a promotion somewhere, so they come in and they start like a mutiny. And then because of like this very forward-facing fight for a managerial position, they eventually get it out of fear. But that generally doesn't work, right? It's not the Dark Ages anymore. So, and maybe that didn't even work then. Maybe I'm not giving people of that time period enough credit. But what is more likely to happen is that like the person who seeks power will slowly poison the well, start telling other employees, hey, did you hear that manager A said this about that and is getting paid more than this person and is lying about it, blah, blah, blah. So this is like a very quiet type of power, and this is where Pluto thrives, right? That's Pluto's domain. The more marching in, demanding your your land type beat. That's more Martian, honestly. So Pluto works in the dark, works behind the scenes and the shadows and whispers and gossip. And then Pluto is in Capricorn. When I view the earth signs, I view them as different parts of a tree. So Virgo is like the branches swaying in the wind, flexible, playful, but still sturdy. And then Taurus is like the tree trunk, strong-hearted, focused, secure, but also beautiful and in your face, and creates a fullness in nature, right? And then Capricorn are the roots. So they're deep in the earth, creating nourishment, creating a source of food for the tree itself, the reason why the tree is able to survive, and a little bit of Darwinism, survival of the fittest type beat. So that's how I feel Pluto in Capricorn is activated, right? Going back to what I was saying earlier, the solar eclipse square Pluto in Capricorn reminds us that the things that we let go of were once of benefit to us. They protected us at one point and helped us survive. An example of this for me, I will tell one little eclipse season story. And this was right when I first started getting into witchcraft. So I was still in high school, and I was just starting to follow things like eclipse seasons and shit like that. One of my many defense mechanisms growing up, I was always a very sensitive kid, was white lying. Okay, I was a little bit of a white liar growing up, and it would just sort of tumble out of me. You know what I mean? I had a deeply low self-esteem, so I thought that if I stretched the truth in some corners of my stories, that I would appear cooler or funnier or more interesting. I was so desperate and so determined to be loved that I would do anything to get to that point. I was always very ashamed of it at the time because, like, you know, I still had a moral compass, but it was compromised in those moments because I felt very unsafe at places like school, around my peers. And it wasn't until an eclipse season occurred, the first one that I really properly observed, that one of my white lies blew up in my face and I got owned because of it. It's a messy, messy thing, not worth getting into detail. Looking back, to me, those little white lies ended up being a source of safety for me. It allowed me to walk the earth a little deeper, and although I always had like this craggy sense of guilt building up in my stomach the more that I did these little white lies, they were necessary for that time. There was this fleeting feeling of like betraying myself by letting go of this part of myself, which sounds so weird because there was of course like this sense of relief where it's like, okay, I don't have to play this stupid little white lie game anymore. And I find the truth is out, right? But it was also like a part of this lie got me to some of the friendships that I have now. And I, ever since then, for the record, like I obviously don't do that anymore. It's not worth it. It never is. You should just authentically show up and be yourself. It's just the kindest thing to do to yourself and the people around you. But it was almost like a sunk cost fallacy, I guess, of like, God, I invested all this time into this stupid little lie. And like, there was a part of me that just wanted to like run, you know, and just never talk to these people again that were involved and caught up in the BS. And it was also like, what if I like just like commit to, you know what I mean? Like there's so many different running parts, and it was definitely a Band-Aid ripping moment, right? Because the relief of the skin being able to breathe, but also the pain and you know, there's a yucky wound underneath. And I think that this also aligns with the whole South Node dynamic that's going on. Just like understanding that even though we may have put a lot of time and energy into these protections and safety nets that we've built up for ourselves, and habits and mindsets and people and environments, all these things, it's always better to drop them when the weight becomes too much. And I talk about this a lot here, where I can always tell when something is not a good fit for me because it's heavy. I've also had to learn over these last years the difference between a healthy weight and an unhealthy weight. Because there's some healthy weights, because I talk about sometimes like healthy stress, where it's like me solving like a murder mystery in a video game, or like I'm reading my first horror book ever, at the moment, and like there's like a healthy stress going on there where I'm like not feeling down, but like, you know, my heart's pumping and my mind is racing, and I'm able to playfully participate in it rather than get overwhelmed by it, which I also think is a skill that needs to be learned over time. But at some point the lie just was carrying such a heavy weight, and it should have never existed in the first place, but it was there because it was the only way I felt I could show up, you know, and be there and be around and be loved. And so eclipses bring us back home to ourselves, maybe an ugly way, but a necessary way. So that's why we have to trust these eclipse seasons. Listen, the sun and the moon are either working at 300% or 0%. We don't got them on our side. Our natural like connectors and antenna that keep us connected to our emotions and our ego. Things are just flying, and the barometers are just going up and down, you know. What I want to ask you is, once again, I really recommend seeing where Libra is in your chart. Start to think about questions like, what do you think is looking to be released during this eclipse season? What do you think has run its course in your life? And then on top of that, how can you thank what you are releasing for its beneficial properties then, while understanding that it no longer serves you on your journey now? Because I do think that there's an important grief process that happens anytime we let go of anything, even if it is painful, even if it doesn't fit, even if it's directly abusive to our being, right? And I don't think it's fair to ourselves to then shun ourselves from the feelings we feel after cutting these things off. We have to let it flow. We have to let that river just collapse within us, you know? It's so important. But I think that's all I have to say about the solar eclipse. We will be talking about eclipse more at the lunar eclipse about halfway through, but let's start looking at the rest of this lunation cycle. So not much happens early month other than the solar eclipse. So that, like I said, that will be the 14th. The next major lunation shift will be on October 18th. That will be the waxing crescent in Sagittarius. This is going to be a nice, discerning, brave first step into the eclipse cycle. And the only planet really interacting with the moon at this time is our morning star Venus in Virgo, which is square the moon during this waxing crescent. And just to remind you, Venus is not happy right now. Venus is in fall in Virgo, so she's very uncomfortable because Venus is usually very playful, free, creative, and Virgo, I don't know, kind of puts Venus in a little bit of a box, in my opinion. Virgo's very fastidious in particular, and Venus is a little bit more free-flowing, so she just doesn't really have the resources at hand to be at full capacity. We're already kind of squished into this uncomfortable Venus lunar place. The way that I'm viewing this is like as an extension of this eclipse energy we've been talking about. I feel like this is going to be a deeply uncomfortable eclipse, like deep in our souls, especially if the band-aids start ripping as soon as the solar eclipse blooms, right? So be okay with feeling uncomfortable, vulnerable, observed, even in your pain and in your growing pains of this eclipse. Keep your mind and heart open to messages, maybe a little bit of self-scrutiny. Maybe this might be a bit of a tough love day for yourself, especially if you're just like not getting the point. Who knows, maybe things will be revealed to you right away so that you waste no time getting to the point of this eclipse. I feel like you're going to be greeted pretty quickly with what no longer applies, right? Especially for those who are Venusian or have strong Virgo placements here, okay? I feel like it's gonna come through pretty strong on this day. And listen, you might want to run away from these feelings, but this placement, the moon square Venus, this is a great place to keep digging. And if you are feeling squeezed because of this, if like I said, life must go on, maybe today is not the day that you can possibly conquer or confront something like this, take a short, exciting, independent break when it feels too much. That's because the moon is in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is all about adventure and getting out there and greeting the world and expanding your mind, you know. Let that morning star Venus seed sprout in innovative and courageous ways to kind of soothe this immediate uncomfortable squeeze that we get just from eclipse season goodness. The next day, on October 19th, we will be... Oh, I forgot about this. I did the notes a few days ago. Wait, I got excited reading this. We're going to have a Sun-Mercury cazimi in Libra. So cazimis in astrology, it's when a planet is okay, I'm sorry, I'm not good at numbers. It's pretty much exactly conjunct the sun. I believe there's just very little bit of leeway between the conjunction. It has to be exactly conjunct. And Sun-Mercury cazimis are amazing for social goodness. And in fact, this lunation cycle are going to have tons of opportunities for schmoozing, for socializing, for working the room. This is going to be an awesome time for those of us who have something to prove, who want to put ourselves out there, make us the star of the show, which is so ironic because eclipse seasons are definitely about going inward, but it seems like in between the two individual eclipses, we are just greeted with so many opportunities to it's almost like if we do fully shed the skin early eclipse season and are able to show up naked to the world and just unapologetic, there's going to be so many rewards astrologically for us, and this day is no different. This is such a day, October 19th, with the Sun-Mercury cazimi in Libra. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's a day to work the room, charming the pants off the other people, whoever's there. It's lush and playful and flirty. It's about showing up with that big, beautiful mind of yours and speaking your truth and just lighting up the room with your authentic energy. And trust me, you might not be feeling this after the start of eclipse season, but if you happen to be in it, listen, be deliberate with your presence. I feel like you're gonna get really high charisma rolls on October 19th. Let me just say this is also an excellent date night, okay? Especially to those with Libra in their 7th house. I don't know. I think this will be a wonderful, wonderful time to get out there and just schmooze and be giggly and have a good time. And it's kind of interesting because immediately the next day, on October 20th, we're going to see Mercury in Libra square Pluto in Capricorn. So at this point, Mercury is now combust, which is what happens after a cazimi and before a cazimi. We've talked about this before. To have a planet combust means that they're under the sun just close enough where they're almost getting drowned out by the sun's rays. They're getting scorched. And although Mercury is a dry planet and doesn't get quite as injured as other planets do in this combust phase, Mercury's not very happy. So it's almost like you have this big blooming moment on the 19th and you may have trouble following it up the next day. So maybe in a true eclipse fashion, it's communication breakdown. It's going to be a pain as opposed to yesterday's mercurial glow. I feel like Mercury in Libra square Pluto and Capricorn deals with stuff like mind games, power struggles, even just straight up lying from those who are especially desperate for control. So just be aware of people who are also going to compensate for this energy that's in the world during October 20th, right? So this makes for sort of an interesting, fun, whiplashy little waxing crescent phase. It'll be interesting to behold, I think. So we're just getting out of this little bit of a social whirlwind, and we enter the first quarter moon in Capricorn on October 21st. And I think that this is when a bubble starts to kind of pop and things start to really bubble up eclipse season wise. It was kind of easy that first moon phase, but now we're getting into more critical placements, and we're also going to be entering Scorpio season during this stretch. So first thing to note is that our first quarter moon will be conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, which we've talked about a little bit lately. And to me, whenever I see the moon hand in hand with Pluto, I worry about how we emoting to the world. To emote or not to emote? That is the question. I feel like that this will add to the fizzy energy of emotions running through the air right now. There's just going to be extra emotional turbulence during this first quarter moon. I feel like we can soothe this energy by calling in the cooling, earthy, grounding energy of Capricorn, which I think really thrives by prioritizing routine and security. I feel like I'm going to be using this phrase a lot this episode, which is going back to basics, right? True eclipse season fashion, honestly, but with just a little bit of more of an earthy edge, 5 senses, making sure you're nourished, well hydrated. Like, it sounds silly to like remediate planetary stuff with physical stuff, but once again, it's eclipse season. It's wild. It's wilding out here. Our first quarter moon will also be squared Mercury, the Sun, and the South Node in Libra. Once again, there's just like a lot of stuff astrologically that's keeping us in old habits and the comfort zone. Stay very discerning of distractions and glamour at this time. Oh, we're going to be talking a lot about glamour, by the way, later in this episode. It's kind of interesting how the Fae, I think, are going to be really out to play around Samhain and really influence our ability to discern during this time period. That's why we gotta really rely on ourselves this eclipse season. Every eclipse season, but especially this one, because it's so social, and I just feel like there's going to be a lot of like red herrings and distracting side quests that are just not relevant. Just keep feeling it, okay? Keep feeling it through. Soothe as necessary. Let it out. Feel your feelings, okay? And don't let any of this mumbo jumbo get in your way, okay? So there is a transit shift today as well on October 21st. We will be seeing Mercury enter Scorpio until November 9th. When I think about Mercury and Scorpio, I think about cryptic messages. I think about sarcasm. The first sarcastic person had to be a Scorpio Mercury, surely. It's about saying more than what like meets the ear. This is where conjecture comes in and underhanded comments. I know I'm saying like a lot of like negative things here. I think there's a lot of positive ways for this to be manifested as well, like through riddle and humor and stuff like that. But I think that unfortunately most people will perceive Mercury and Scorpio as like this like dark edge of Mercury, when really I think it's just, as usual, a more neutral placement. I think that in general our communication may take a turn for slightly more misanthropic, like, edge, and maybe not being afraid to breach darker discussions and cognitions, which I think is perfect for eclipse season, honestly. And then on top of this, Scorpio's ruler, Mars, is also in Scorpio. So I feel like that this is just like a super powered Mercury and Scorpio moment. And now that they're both working together, we have to worry a little bit about brash and abrasive communication, okay? Just watch for that within ourselves, especially if we have strong Martian placements. If you feel like you are a little bit too sharp during this time, or you're snapping back a little too hard on your loved ones, especially when you're feeling so eclipse season squeezed, a good way to remediate an unhealthy, unhappy Mercury and Scorpio is just imagine if you were spoken to like the way you just spoke in those uncomfortable moments. Just imagine if you were snapped at like that. You need a little bit of bird's eye view here, I think. And think about how it would make you feel. What is it like before you speak? Ask yourself if what you're going to say is true, kind, necessary, or helpful. Right? I think that's the rule. And if it's none of those things, then don't say anything at all. I think it requires a little bit of tact with Mercury and Scorpio because, I don't know, Scorpio is just a little extra fired up right now. So tread carefully. I don't think this is a bad placement at all. And in fact, we're going to see some of its strengths later on in this cycle. But I just think it coming in right now, right at the beginning of eclipse season, we might be saying some things we regret or perhaps surprising ourselves in that process too. And in fact, the next day on October 22nd, we are met with Mercury and Scorpio trine Saturn in Pisces. I think that this will actually immediately help rein in the sharpness of Mercury, just for a moment though, because Mercury's fast and we'll just speed on around. So hopefully you didn't make any irreparable damage on the 21st, because the 22nd should immediately at least ground this sharp communication, this sarcastic communication edge that may not be useful at the moment. I can also see Mercury trine Saturn being a bit of a lonely moment by choice, in theory. Maybe take a day off from mercurial BS just to sharpen your ears, eyes, your sword, I wrote down that this is a knight's day. I don't know what I meant by that. Like a knight in shining armor. I like when I write notes and I have no idea what the fuck I meant by it. Honestly, but like knowing me and knowing my brain, Mercury trine Saturn really does feel like a knight to me. Just someone sharp of sword, determined of mind, and like good at presently being there and being like this pinnacle of forward momentum. And I did write down a couple of journal prompts for this aspect here, which is, where can you productively move your energy and attention? What's distracting you? And how can you alchemize your discomfort into action? Now, these are, I think, just things to ponder about during this Mercury trine Saturn moment, because once again, it's eclipse season. Maybe it's not the best time to move any of those ideas forward, but because the wisdom is so thick in the air, I think you're going to receive some pretty cool answers. In fact, this whole eclipse season is an awesome time to journal and check in with yourself and follow prompts and just get to the bottom of some BS, especially that stuff that's just been lingering in your Libran house, you know, and just like creating this weight on you. It's gotta go. Okay, and more importantly, there's more important stuff to call in of the Libra influence. Because I think we're actually going to see most of the escorting out in the lunar eclipse in a little bit. And then on October 23rd, we enter Scorpio season. Woohoo! Such a perfect fit for Halloween. So Scorpio has two rulers. They're ruled by Mars and they're ruled by Pluto. Okay, so, and I think that we are greeted with a choice every time that Scorpio season pops up, but especially in the thick of this eclipse season. And I wrote, shall we dive into the icy Plutonian depths and explore the shadows? Or shall we burst into a brilliant Martian flame of passion to keep us warm on these cool, cool days? Okay, the choice is yours. I think that Scorpio embodies both ends of that spectrum, where I picture, of course, a scorpion. Small, agile, strong shell, sharp, poisonous, or venomous, I think, stinger. Quick to attack anyone who gets in their way, but then you crack open the shell and it's just this soft inside. I think it's that little bit of fiery offensive is the best defensive sort of strategy that Scorpios are so good at. And it's like, do you want to lean into the dark parts of Scorpio, the depths, the shadows, the power struggles of the Plutonian way? Or are you going to put yourself out there on this wave of fiery Martian goodness and propel yourself physically, mentally into new, more creative and better fitting adventures and explorations for your life? Welcome to Scorpio season. I just want to say that one of my best friends is a triple Scorpio. So she has sun, moon, and rising in Scorpio. And she is one of the most complicated people I've ever met. and this is me knowing, understanding, comprehending all of us with our deep, rich inner worlds. Like, she is an enigma wrapped in a mystery, like even to herself sometimes. It's kind of amazing. So shout out to Scorpios. I love you guys. You're the realest. And Scorpios have always been the ones to most quickly see through my performative Gemini BS. And I respect that. They're pretty fucking cool. Listen, we're still in the first quarter, by the way, so we're still walking through here, October 23rd, but then October 24th, the last day of this moon phase, we have one final aspect, which is the Sun in Scorpio trine Saturn in Pisces. So we just had Mercury touch base with Saturn, and we kind of reined in our cognitive and communication abilities. So now the Sun gets to interact with Saturn, and in a happy trine place. Trines are pretty positive and free-flowing. It's almost like we're following up this like discerning mercurial moment with an extra burst of solar complexity and clarity in the midst of eclipse season. I would say keep your ears open for opportunities for you to overachieve, to exert yourself. And I think that this is kind of an interesting aspect, because normally I would read this as like Sun trine Saturn, That's just like overachiever energy. That's just like having a good, healthy work ethic, exerting yourself, putting yourself out there. But I think because with the little edge of eclipse season thrown into the mix, it's almost like listen for those opportunities right now. See if any of those apply to you. And this is a wonderful day to exert yourself, but I also think this is an excellent day to be aware of those kinds of opportunities being in your circle and maybe even just calling in that type of energy to like bottle up and carry with you. You know, it's just such a potent day for getting shit done and getting it done proudly, even in spite of like the eclipse season nonsense. So I don't know, your mileage may vary here, but something overachiever, something open to high work ethic opportunities. I just worry about recommending actually doing something multi-step hard work process during eclipse season, but hey, I trust you guys. You'll figure it out. And then we head into our next moon phase, the waxing gibbous moon in Pisces. This is where we start to get a little heady, okay? Because I'm gonna spoil you guys right now. The lunar eclipse, we are lost in the sauce. Okay, so we are starting to crawl into this really, really psychedelic, like otherworldly, abstract lunar eclipse with this waxing gibbous in Pisces, okay? And we don't have any major transits or aspects happening here, but we do have some planets interacting with the moon herself. I saw here that this waxing gibbous will be trine Ceres in Scorpio. I feel like that this just creates such a psychic internal moment. You're probably gonna cry. Ceres is the asteroid of healing ourselves, healing the world, and just like the whole idea of what it means to soothe and be kind and treat ourselves with a determined goal of healing. I guess. Healing all the way down. That's Ceres. Let's just honor the tenderness as we start to amp up for a very visceral lunar eclipse. And then also the moon will be opposite morning star Venus in Virgo, and there may be like a want, a desire stirring deep within you, and ponder these desires as they pop up. Chase them if you have the energy, focus, hold the flame if you're feeling a bit tired. Honestly, I think that this is a great moment for a vision board. Given that, right? Because I feel like we don't really have the energy output to like, whoa, I've been dreaming so big. Like, it's almost like the universe is like sort of like mailing us messages right now. So it's like, it's a little bit harder to like conjure up these feelings ourselves, especially as we're approaching this lunar eclipse. That's why I think a vision board is such a good idea for today. And even just a little one, you can even just get like really specific, like my car vision board, like, or my job vision board, not necessarily like a huge one, but if you're feeling inspired in one direction and you kind of want to hold that flame. And so this is because of opposite Venus in Virgo, but there's also a conjunction to Neptune. Pretty loose, but it's still there. So we got like a little bit of that Delulu energy as a treat. I wrote down definitely a vision board day. LOL. I don't know. Get all these like last minute lunar jitters out of your system because it's going to be eclipse time. And so it ends up being a pretty quiet waxing gibbous for the most part, other than maybe a bit of dreamy Neptunian Ceres healing energy, right? And all these like very watery placements. A little bit of grounding with that Venus in Virgo, which is why I was like, okay, let's manifest that into something tangible like a vision board. But this is a pretty just like heady, shrewd, honeyed moment for all of us silly little humans. Then, finally what I've been waiting for. October 28th will be the lunar eclipse in Taurus, which is also known as the Hunter's Moon for those who are familiar with the folklore. This lunar eclipse will be conjunct Jupiter. Boom! It'll also be opposite Sun, Mercury, and Mars in Scorpio. Boom! You're lost in the sauce. Feel. There is no conjuring to be done here, no manifesting, no invoking. The earth is between the sun and the moon. It is taking in all of the moon rays. All things astral are being grounded back into the earth. It's visceral, it's intoxicating, it's glamorous. Okay, this is a very sexy little lunar eclipse, and we are being asked to lose ourselves in this tenderness, howl at the moon, mourn the warmth that is gone, and embrace the chill, or maybe vice versa. Like I do with every full moon, it's so hard to talk about what is actually factually going to occur, because these energies are so potent when they come up. I just feel like full moons are so particular to you, to who you are, to where the moon is in your chart, how powerful the moon is. So once again, I invite you to look, where is this lunar eclipse in Taurus happening in your chart? What cycles are ending in your Taurus house? And how can you best rip off the Band-Aid and start fresh? Okay, I'll tell you about myself. So my lunar eclipse will be happening in my third house. Third house, Taurus, that only houses my Mars in Taurus in detriment. Honestly, my third house is one of the least happy places in my chart, in my opinion. So I'm not particularly excited about this lunar eclipse, because it's interesting too, because I have such a bubbly third house, because I'm just like a very communication heavy person. I talk a lot. I talk all day long. I'm writing all day long. The third house is the house of communication and cognition and vacations and siblings, and I'm an only child, so that's not relevant to me. I am looking forward to this lunar eclipse shed some light on some ways that I could be communicating better. I have been forgetting a lot of things, which I think is also third house nonsense. I feel like there's so many times when like my family wants to deliver a message to my boyfriend and then I forget to tell him something, and then he's blindsided. This has been happening for months. Who knows? Maybe something horrible will happen where I forget to tell him something and it blows up in my face, and then I'll never ever forget ever again. Listen, that's how eclipses work. But honestly, I have no idea what it will behold for me. All I know is that it'll be in the house of communication, of short vacations, of education, like surfacey, non-derogatory, but like surfacey education, where, because like I'm just like a jack of all trades type of person, when maybe the ninth house deals with like deep dives of study and devotion to study. This is like, I'm Googling stuff. That's like third house shit. So I don't know. I'm open though to the junk drawer of my chart revealing anything that needs to be revealed to me, right? And that's another reason why it's hard to be like, this eclipse is going to do this to you, because it's so specific to our own personal journey. It's fucking visceral. Like you're gonna feel this in your bones. So get ready. Lunar eclipse in Taurus. It lose yourself in her wisdom, in Luna's wisdom, and see what cycles are coming to a close. Look at the last 6 months. Look at when the previous eclipse season was, and see what cycles started then, and see how they are coming to a close now. That's what I recommend to you, and see if there's any way that you can encourage that process, help it along, and just be present for this eclipse madness that we will all be beholding during this time. And then followed up on the next day, on October 29th, we will have Mercury in Scorpio conjunct Mars in Scorpio. So they're both a little bit out of order. They're both like a little combust under the rays. Like they're not totally happy, but they're still working together. I wrote down, I'm just going to read you what I wrote, because once again, I wrote these notes a few days ago and I don't know what the okay. Mischievous mushroom energy. I love it because it's true. I know myself so well. Scheme up your next plan inspired by the lunar eclipse's dusky erudition. Whoa, bars. Holy shit. True and real. I don't know what this is going to mean to you as the listener. This speaks volumes to me as Doogsley. Mischievous mushroom energy. Yeah, I don't know. Mercury in Scorpio conjunct Mars in Scorpio. Yeah, this definitely feels like a rubbing your hands together kind of day. So especially after getting all your sneaky little abstract wisdom from the lunar eclipse, you are being asked the next day to really process it. Maybe get a little sneaky with some of the stuff that you're planning. Listen, sneakiness and hiding things is only bad if it hurts people, right? But I also think there's such a magic to secrets and shadows and holding things in the dark until they're ready to bloom. And so I feel like there's like this inherent sneakiness to mushrooms, where when they fruit, they're big and beautiful and pop out of the ground, and sometimes are so strong that they shatter rocks. But then underneath their roots, the mycelium is like microscopic. They're little secrets. You don't even know where they're going. So work up your mycelium, your little mushroom world wide web underneath your ground, and start setting up foundations for all the wisdom you received on the beautiful lunar eclipse. Which, by the way, I didn't mention this, but you should probably spend it alone or like with a fellow witch, someone else who's also willing to just kind of exist with you. I don't know. I don't think eclipses are a very social time. I can't lie. The little blips in between these eclipses are appearing to be very social, but the eclipses themselves, nah, it's a pretty solo deal. So we're going to take a break from talking about the lunation as a whole because I did want to take a moment to talk about the astrology of Samhain, of Halloween, October 31st, my favorite holiday. I'm very excited. I don't want to talk about too much of Samhain in particular because I think I'm going to be doing a whole episode on that next episode. We're going to be having a Samhain tea party, so look forward to that, I suppose. But I will talk about the astrology that will be coming up on Halloween, which, by the way, Samhain is just the pagan name for Halloween. I'm probably going to just use them interchangeably. So first of all, we will be greeted with a Gemini moon on Samhain. I kind of went poet mode here, so I'm going to read you what I wrote for my notes. I said, like a champagne flute full of bubbly strawberry punch, blackberry cinnamon crumble on a petite obsidian plate, the smell of firewood and star anise and candy corn, rosy cheeks from an autumnal chill and a lighter step. The veil is thin. The world has a bounce to it. Social, curious, giggly. Leave an offering to your local fae, maybe a ghoul or two. A day of intrigue. Indeed, that is exactly how I feel about this Gemini moon on Halloween. And worth noting, I'm a natal Gemini moon, so I feel very at home with this placement. Once again, we're thrown back into like this very potential social moment. I think that this is a wonderful day to get together with friends, have a little Halloween party, have a little night of witchery, and even a little bit of a mischief night. I found out a few years ago that mischief night only really happens here in like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, but it's the night before Halloween. And we just go out and we get up to no good. We TP houses, we glitter bomb stuff, we seed bomb stuff. Not glitter bomb anymore, because we found out, that was just some dumb kid shit. But that shit does not degrade in the earth, just so you know. Glitter is generally not healthy for Gaia, unfortunately, because glitter is the best. But I would spend the night before just putting on silly little masks with my friend, and gosh, now I'm just nostalgic. Now I'm just thinking about it. But anyway, I don't know. I feel like Geminis rule the fae and fairies and pixies, like of that kind in particular, like the what we think of when we think of fairies, which are these like little petite creatures, but also creatures of intrigue and of ancient wisdom as well, like forest fae. But I'm thinking particularly pixies, so that's why I'm like thinking like it's just bubbly. This is a really playful, social, silly little moon. It's also worth mentioning that Scorpio is very lit at this point. We got Sun, Mars, Mercury, and Ceres all hanging out in Scorpio, which is opposite our Jupiter and Uranus retrogrades in Taurus. Those 4 planets I mentioned, Sun, Mars, Mercury, Ceres, they're all conjunct. Like, for the most part, they're all within 12 degrees of each other. And to me, this is such a warming of the hearth, right? And sort of like lighting up these dark, cobwebby corners of ourselves and our loved ones. And so I ask you, for Halloween, we talked about where Libra and Taurus is in your chart. Where is Scorpio in your chart? And how are these planets interacting with your planets? And I wanted to give an example that I looked into here. So I have a 9th house Scorpio. It is home to my Jupiter, North Node, and Pluto. They're all retrograde. All these 4 planets transitly are all squished between my Jupiter and North Node, like almost exactly. My North Node's conjunct my Pluto, for the record, so like all my planets are sort of like bookending the planets that are in the sky. And I was thinking about this and looking at this, and first of all, this makes a full house of planets for me. I think I have every single inner planet except for Venus, and I have almost every outer planet except for Saturn. So I got a pretty full house here. And it's in my 9th house, which is the house of spirituality, of upper education, of expanding and deepening our minds. So I seriously think I'm going to be spending Samhain doing magic, performing some magic playfully, because it's eclipse season. And for the record, because there's a bit of conjecture of like, when can I start performing this manifestation magic again, if not during eclipses? Good question. No one. I would give it like until the next moon phase before you start doing stuff like that. That's just my take. I think other witches and astrologers would say other things, but for me, I probably wouldn't participate in that kind of magic till the next new moon, full moon cycle, personally. But your mileage may vary. Some people will say that what I'm saying is all BS, so you can do whatever kind of magic whenever you want. And I'm not your mom, you can do whatever you want, but I personally feel that this is not the time for magic of that kind. However, if you want to invoke a little chaos, then you are welcome to fuck around and find out. I don't know, good luck to you. I'd love to hear your fucked up little chaos magic eclipse tales, for sure. But yeah, I guess like that whole dance in Scorpio for me is gonna manifest in just a magical night. Lighthearted, playful magic, since I have such a full audience. I feel like I gotta spin around and do something cool for them. I don't know, it's pretty cool. Like, I'm gonna spend some time at my altar. I'll go say hi to my fae friends. I might pick up a new book and get deeper into my spiritual practice in that way. And I guess for me, I'm just gonna honor what's going on and honor the wisdom that I've gotten this eclipse and alchemize it into a cute little spell for myself, just for fun. Nothing too deep. Witchcraft for the sake of witching. Never hurt anyone, I don't think. And one final transit I want to talk about for Samhain is Venus in Virgo trine Uranus in Taurus. I've said this word a few times. This is such an awkward lunation phase. And I think that Samhain, it's really going to peak of like this just weird, strange oddness. And what better day to lift up the weird than Halloween? You know, and give it a voice. Like, lift up the uncomfortable, the awkward, the weirdness, the odd of the world. This is such a good day to lean into your besties, your ride or dies, the ones who will never judge how weird you are, the ones that you are 100% comfortable with. Will especially feel good if you'd had to do some cord cutting earlier in the eclipse, so now you have a very clear view of who your true besties are, the ones who actually matter, the ones who actually respect you. And, like, don't overthink this. Though. Don't overthink these vibes. Don't lean into this very intriguing All Hallows Eve. I invite you. I think it's going to be really bubbly, really interesting, really playful, and will be a little bit of a pause from this rather stressful eclipse season. Quite potent. And with that, we enter November. Welcome to November. We're out of October. A little sad, but surely Samhain ended it with a boom. And immediately on November 1st, we enter the next moon phase. So we are fully out of the lunar eclipse phase at this point. We have entered the disseminating moon in Gemini still. Once again, sort of like the last lunation, I was really surprised to see how much the astrology mirrors just the natural flux of the moon herself. And this one is no different because I feel like we're immediately brought into a quieter sense of self after sort of an explosive lunar eclipse and Samhain. So immediately our disseminating moon is trine the south node in Libra and sextile the north node in Aries. So those are two very happy aspects for our nodes. Samhain's afterglow is quite strong, and you may want to rest up today, maybe not go on too much of a bender on Halloween if you have anything important the day after, because I think that November 1st we will be feeling called to sort of curl up and start a little hibernation ritual here and just like sort of hold the magic that occurred on Halloween. Keep it close to our heart and keep it like fresh in our mind. I think that we're going to have some really cool revelations on Samhain, just like as a whole, just because of some of the astrology magic in the air, right? Also, this disseminating moon will be square Venus in Virgo. Like, Venus being in Virgo aside, which is already not happy, I just feel like Venus has been struggling for a little bit regarding its connections to the moon. The moon is squaring Venus, and I was curious. I was like, what is Venus even up to? And I checked out Venus, and Venus is interacting with like every planet, like every placement on this chart. So Venus is scattered at this moment. She is not grounded. She is not happy. She is uncomfortable, does not have the tools she needs to make everyone feeling happy and luxuriated and loved. You may be feeling some confusion or like just similarly scatteredness in all things Venusian, which is aesthetic, connection, details, attraction, and try not to overthink this part. I know it's hard because the moon's in Gemini. So maybe there might be this beautiful Samhain glow romance that occurs, and then the next day you might be double like overthinking it, especially for our mercurial selves, and it's just like shh, 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 shh. there's no need to conceptualize your feelings, I think is where I want to land here. Okay, let your feelings feel. Once again, this is pure eclipse season. Don't force anything, okay? Like, just let the feelings feel. Find out where they're sitting, why they're bubbling up in this way, right? Get a little curious, but don't hold on to them and marry these feelings of scattered confusion and all Venusian aspects of life, right? Just take it easy today. At the very least, once again, just settle into like the afterglow of Samhain, especially if you've been steadfast on this eclipse journey. I think you'll definitely be able to reap the rewards of a nice, empowering, joyous Samhain. But also, this disseminating moon will be square Neptune retrograde in Pisces, and it's just like back to reality. Like we are required to refocus. Please gather up your inspiration from a magical Samhain and likely harrowing eclipse season. We're back. So unfortunately, eclipse season has settled its roots back into the earth, and we're continuing to learn and grow. So we can't be in La La Land for too much longer, unfortunately. The day after this, November 2nd, we will see a bit of an aspect shift. The Sun in Scorpio will be opposite Jupiter in Taurus. Whispering. Embrace whispering in all things small, okay? Sun in Scorpio already. I don't want to say it's a small energy. That's not true. It's like I can't believe I'm about to say this. It's like the TARDIS, right? Like, what year is this? It's bigger on the inside. Scorpio, I think of a little scorpion, and then I think Jupiter and Taurus. Holy shit, it's so big. It's such a big energy. It slaps you in the face like a pancake. And I don't know, those two at ends, it's just like, why don't we embrace the depth of the small, embrace whispering, embrace shrinking. Okay, I talked a little bit about this last transit. I think there was a Virgo moment that I talked about appreciating the small, intricate things in life, right? This is a mouse-like defensive placement, right? We might be feeling a little extra sensitive after our very magical and expansive Samhain and very exhausting eclipses. So, and listen, there may be some people that will compensate for this quiet energy, right? And this is where I talked a little bit about some of the mercurial Scorpio type B that's going to be happening here, because I think this is when we're going to really see people who did not learn or embrace much of the eclipse start to act out. And they're going to start compensating for this quiet magic in the air, and they're going to show up like air horns in the middle of like an audience of people silently waiting for the movie to start. And it's like, shh. Be soothing, be calm, be collected. And November 2nd, embrace and appreciate the smallness and understand the depths that hide in which appears to be minuscule. Think about how a watch is so small but requires so many moving, intricate parts for it to work. And think about all the little cogs that needs to be taken out of one little watch. All those moving parts coming together to make a whole. These are the things one must ponder about when Sun in Scorpio is opposite Jupiter and Taurus. And then the next day, November 3rd, still in the disseminating moon phase, we're going to see Venus in Virgo opposite Neptune in Pisces with Neptune retrograde. And I didn't mention this, but Jupiter is also retrograde at the moment. Kind of a dull day, dare I say it. I feel like November 3rd, okay, jot this down, not an exciting day. I know this feels like a little bit of a silly forecast, I guess, but like it stuck out to me in the way that it's like, I wrote down a no leaves on trees autumn day. So, like, there's just, like, a crisp in the air, but there's, like, you know, the big storm came through and blew all the leaves off, and now your front lawn is, like, all crunchy, and the sky is gray, and I'd love to hear what kind of magic to invoke on it. I think it's just a continuation of a quiet November 2nd. Don't expect much, but appreciate the magic and not expecting much. And then November 4th, we got a bit of an exciting aspect shift. We will see Saturn going direct in Pisces. Finally. And this was right before Saturn was about to leave Pisces. I believe they're at like 0 degrees at this point. We're going to be given an extra layer of discernment, agency, and responsibility. And especially after such a bubbly, like, elfin summer. I feel like the summer was so lighthearted and silly. and we're being brought back to focus, back to school with autumn, and Saturn's also here. And speaking of which, to my fellow Saturn returners, buckle up. This is when it actually truly gets rolling. Starting right at 0 degrees Saturn. Let's freaking go. I'm ready. I'm ready for the Saturn return. Of course, all of us who deal with Saturn returns, especially all of us with our early degree Saturns, we've already been feeling this bubbling up, but I think around this point, early November, we are going to be propelling forward into what is actually factually our Saturn return. So I guess we'll see what happens, right? And also on the same day, November 4th, we're going to see Mercury in Scorpio opposite Uranus and Taurus. This to me feels like a bad communication day. I can't lie. I feel like people who have strong Uranus placements, or maybe like I'll even say weak Mercurial placements, are not going to be clear today. And if we work in a place with a lot of coworkers, or we have to deal with a lot of people, we might run into some communication breakdowns, awkward abstract answers that don't fucking make any sense. So November 4th, we're going to be a bit more serious with Saturn going redirect. And then on top of that, no one's going to know how to speak straight. Let's just be patient. Let's be steadfast in the work. Capital T, capital W. The moon is starting to wink away, starting to close her doors for this very exhausting cycle. And all the planets are working overtime right now. So let's just shh. Let's appreciate this disseminating moon as we just sort of start to shrink into silence and into our assignments. And then the next day, November 5th, we welcome the last quarter moon, or the third quarter moon in Leo. We're going to see some beautiful Venus dancing here. But before that, we gotta look at the moon, of course, our beloved Luna. She is halfway gone, almost ready to slumber once again. Luna is starting to approach the sun once again, creating a square to both the sun and Mars. At this point, Mercury is long gone from that conjunction. I just don't know. We're cooling down. We're closing our eyes. We're prioritizing rest. The moon will also be square Jupiter, retrograde in Taurus. This will change from person to person. Secretly, this whole horoscope changes from person to person. But this one in particular, because I think about moon in Leo is like such a loud, proud moon placement. But when the moon is shrinking and dwindling, I feel like a Leo moon can kind of just lead into like a quiet magnetism and confidence. However, it's square Jupiter. I feel like we're going to just be experiencing a little bit of a disconnect from our dreams and our feelings. I feel like we're going to be feeling a little shy here, but I think this Leo and Jupiter energy there's going to be like a discomfort in us of, do we show up or do we hide and keep working and focusing? I think this is going to change from person to person, but I think that also these horoscopes are useful because I think that, some of us are just like more sensitive to astrology than others, just like intrinsically us personally. I feel like some of us just have charts that are just more aligned with the stars, intuition wise and stuff. And I think that sometimes, where we have days where it's like, why was everyone so rude today? Or God, everyone was so funny today. And then you might walk into work on November 5th and you're like, all I see are people who are like being really shy and internal and uncomfortable with themselves and what they've created. And then on the other side, there's a bunch of people that are like bursting at the seams to share what they've done lately. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense because of like this dance in the sky right now. I don't know. We'll see what happens. This seems like if we want to respect the lunar flow, that I'd say that this is a time to sort of lean into keeping up this flame holding business we're doing and allowing ourselves to sort of close with the moon and rest after such an exhausting cycle. That's just me though. We'll also be seeing this moon in Leo trine Chiron retrograde in Aries. And I wrote down this is a wonderful day for reflection, journaling, therapy, however you enjoy contemplating and pondering best. It's always a good time to journal, but if you want directive, sometimes you need to like put a journaling day in your calendar. Sometimes life is just like that. So maybe November 5th, check in with yourself. You will be supported by the stars. The next day, we have a few transits popping off, a few aspects happening in the sky. We got Venus in Virgo, trine Pluto in Capricorn. Okay, so this is when the last burst of social energy is going to be coming through this lunation. At this point, we may or may not be energetically exhausted, so we'll see how this goes. But I wrote down that this aspect, Venus trine Pluto, It's charming, siren energy. Influence those who matter. Talk with authority. Call in some chirpy glamour magic as well. There's an extra magnetism in the air for those who choose to participate, especially for Mercurials, Plutonians, and Earth signs. Yeah, this is like a very sultry time. In fact, I'll tell you about the next transit too, which happens on the same day, on November 6th. So Venus is trine Pluto, and then Mercury in Scorpio is trine Neptune in Pisces. And I said, just as much as there's smooth tongues, there's keen ears as well. If you are going to be utilizing this day for a day of influence, of beauty, of showing up and schmoozing the pants off of whoever it is that you want to impress, I really think an important edge to this would be not taking yourself too seriously, unfortunately, which I know will be hard because of the Virgo and the Pluto and Capricorn, okay, but because Mercury and Scorpio, their ears are wide open, trine Neptune and Pisces, so they're gonna see through the BS, despite this being a pretty healthy BSing placement. That's why you gotta be playful. You have to be playful, flirty, and lush, and the reason why that has to be as well is because of our weakened Venus, okay? Because Venus, she can't organically help you during this time. You're going to have to rely on your inner Venus, your heart, and that's why the playfulness and this deep call to communicate and connect with people on this day is going to be coming from a real true desire of something. This is a very desirous day. Really, really wanting something and then being able to show up and almost like conjure up this natural magic to beckon it to you, but there needs to be some push and pull, and you don't want to look too fake. You never do, but especially not during this placement, because I think you'll get burnt here, because we do have Mercury and Scorpio, which is pretty unapologetic, you know, and Pluto and Capricorn will also punish you if you do this wrong. So I guess all this to say that November 6th is going to be like this very like sultry, flirty day, and of course flirty is not just a romantic verb, but like, you know, like even like animals can be flirty where they just kind of like touch and go, and like that like sort of playing with like this shadowed Mercury and Scorpio aspect as well is good, but you can't lie and you can't be untruthful through this. So if you feel like you can't walk the walk or talk the talk, then maybe don't participate in those types of things today. But I was really pulled by this like very sultry star dance that is occurring on November 6th, so I thought I'd point that out. A few days pass with not much happening, but then we are greeted on November 8th. I'm so excited for this. Venus enters Libra. Finally. Holy shit. It's been really tough with Venus in Virgo, in my opinion. It's just not a happy place for Venus to be. I feel like Venus in Libra can finally breathe. November 8th, huge day, okay? And although Venus is currently in her morning star state, which is more Taurusian in energy, sorry if you hear stuff behind me, my partner just got home and is putting groceries away. I feel like this extra Libra energy plumps her up to full bloom, the full spectrum of Venusian goodness. Libra energy, Venus in Libra, this is agreeable, diplomatic, elegant, appealing, harmonious energy. It's like a gust of wind, good and expensive perfume, high heels clacking on marble floors. The perfect outfit is Venus in Libra, for sure. And a stimulating love, a well-designed project coming to life. These are all things that Venus in Libra rules. And she is glowing. Huge day for us, just collectively, I guess. Except for maybe us who don't really get along with Venus, but trust me, Venus is always ready to get along with you, even if you have your Venus in Virgo, I promise. I'm dating a Venus in Virgo, and it's possible to connect to a Venus that maybe isn't very happy to be there. There's a way, though. And also on November 8th, Venus... Oh, she's just so happy right now. But we have this Mercury in Scorpio sextile Pluto in Capricorn. So once again, all these planets are still ping-ponging against each other. It's still supportive energy with this previous charming, influential vibes that's just like radiating out of us. Especially, like I said, the Mercurials, Plutonians, and Earth signs I think are going to get really, really schmoozy during this time. This time it'll be like with an extra punch of determination because of that Pluto in Capricorn. Keep it up. If you are choosing to participate in that energy, it is still rewarding. So it's funny because it's almost like Venus is blooming bright during this last quarter in Leo, but us Earthlings, we're starting to dwindle in the dark. And finally, we enter the last moon phase, which is on November 9th. We crawl slowly into a balsamic moon in Libra, right where we started. And so we are confronting the shadows of a closing chapter, but we're going to find ourselves colliding still with this awkward, stifling energy that has been sort of ruminating throughout this whole eclipse cycle, right? Our beloved balsamic moon in Libra will be conjunct Venus in the 1st degree. We love to see it. And this just means, in my mind, I just picture like Luna and Aphrodite embracing in the sky. They're like glistening, plush, and blushing. This is such a great self-care day, okay? Luxuriate accordingly with hair masks and skincare, with lotions, bath bombs, your favorite candle you never like to light. If there's any reason that you can't participate in self-care today, which happens, I think this is like a Thursday, so you might got shit to do, I recommend bottling up this energy in some way, like capturing it in your heart and your soul and carrying it into the weekend / new moon, which will be happening, I think, like the following Monday or Sunday, if I'm remembering correctly. And when I say, I've mentioned this a couple of times here and in previous episodes, bottling up energy, what does that mean? How can I do that? I think that we can do it metaphorically, where it's just like, you, comfy energy, come with me. Like, I'm going to take advantage of this another day, which is a little cheating, but I don't know. I feel like witchcraft is cheating. But also doing things like getting rainwater of the night or moon water of that night and just like using it in your ritual whenever you choose to participate in it. This is such an amazing, comforting moon. And you know, we're slowly drifting out of the eclipse, so the moon energy is getting a little more comfortable and getting back to her normal flow. She's really starting to find herself once again. We're also going to see this moon trine Pluto in Capricorn. This is, once again, very secretive moon phase. We're shrinking, okay? Think about what you should keep close to your chest and what to share with the world. Strengthen the appropriate boundaries as necessary, right? So we are continuing to get smaller and smaller until we are nothing at all and everything all at once, just like a new moon will be. And this moon will be sextile Mercury in Scorpio, so this is her final jaunt in this moon phase with the sneaky Scorpio Mercury. Thank this very interesting mercurial placement for all of their secrets revealed, kept, and yet to come, thanks to this very chaotic eclipse season, because later this day, Mercury will be entering Sagittarius. Okay, so Mercury leaves sultry, secretive Scorpio into meandering foot and mouth Sagittarius. So Mercury is in detriment here, okay, which is a little different from in fall, which is what Venus was dealing with in Virgo. When a planet's in fall, it's like they don't have any of the tools to work at full capacity, but they still want to work. And so there's just like a lot of frustration. But I feel like when they're in detriment, it's like nothing is really fitting in place anyway. So Mercury in Sagittarius is like just a weakened state in general. They're just not at full capacity, full stop. And they are losing their rational and analytical mercurial edge. They have so much to say, but never quite the right words, because Sagittarius rules action and not speaking. Okay, this is an uncomfortable place for Mercury. It ends up being long-winded, confusing, yet inspired speeches with little direction, but a hell of a lot of heart. Mercury and Sagittarius, they tend to speak in circles because they speak of the interconnectedness of all things. And so we are like whiplashed as the audience because they're talking about bedside tables in one moment and then where we go when we die in the next moment. It's nuts. But at the very least, I can also say that Mercury in Sagittarius is quite humble because they don't know a damn thing and they know it. They've experienced a damn thing, they've lived a damn thing, but they can never quite put it into words. They ask many questions, they're eager to learn, unafraid of looking dumb, and also awkwardly, it's amazing because where is the Mercury and Sagittarius in their head? I feel like I've met Mercury and Sagittariuses that stay at home all day and some that just never stop traveling. And I also feel like there's a constant whiplash between those two extremes for them as well. Here's the thing, Mercury themselves, the planet, it doesn't like the seesaw of energy. They get car sick, I feel, because Hermes is just, very steady and fast, definitely quick, but quicksilver perhaps. But it's a steady, speedy pace towards their directive. None of this like speed up, slow down, circular BS. And that's why Mercury is just not happy in Sagittarius. And that's what I mean by like this awkward energy is suddenly like greeting us at the end of this lunation that we're going to have to tackle. And speaking of which, the next day, so this was all happening on November 9th with the balsamic moon, but then on November 10th, Mercury in Sagittarius will be square Saturn in Pisces. Immediately, Mercury becomes bored and grounded by a freshly reorganized direct Saturn. Meanwhile, like the moon is just like trying to sleep. Like maybe take advantage of like Mercury out of order and just like take a nap with the moon. November 10th, nap time day. Get ready. I feel like a lot of us are just going to be feeling confused and talking our asses off about nothing in particular and getting nowhere. So, and Saturn's trying to help, but it's not really helping because Mercury's already frustrated being here. So just no social today. Okay, hopefully all your like social nonsense got wrapped up early November 9th because it's going to start to get a little messy here. All the hard work that you've been schmoozing this whole lunation, just make sure that you get it all figured out by like before Mercury enters Sagittarius, because there's not going to be much to schmooze after that, you know. And finally, maybe a little bit of an anticlimactic ending to this whole lunation, but on November 11th, we're going to see Mars in Scorpio opposite Uranus and Taurus, and this might be one of the first like worldly forecasts I've given, but historically, Mars opposite Uranus is accident prone. Just in general, I recommend staying off the roads. It's unpredictable, it's unstable energy, create extra defenses. If you practice witchcraft, this is a great day for extra protections. And honestly, that's the last big shift that happens before November 13th with the new moon in Scorpio. So it's kind of an awkward ending. We close out the lunation by closing our eyes with the moon, kind of shaking off the discomfort of Mercury in Sagittarius, still likely processing all of this eclipse goodness. And like I said, there's technically like this 90-day phase, I feel, in eclipses. So who knows, you still might be receiving messages and becoming one with all these divine eclipse lessons and wisdom that is just asked of us every 6 months of the year. It's just so funny. This one is particularly potent because of Samhain's influence. I feel the veil being extra thin, getting likely extra messages from our ancestors, from Fae, even maybe interference in that way, right? And that's why we really, really have to rely on our intuition, our voice, and what we feel is relevant to us. And hopefully we can extend some gratitude towards the eclipse for opening and revealing all that needs to be revealed during this time so that we can take the proper steps to heal and respect ourselves and relinquish power and trust fall into the universe, because I think that is how we can best respect and celebrate an eclipse, is holding our nose and diving deep and just allowing the waters to roll over us and knowing that the next time we open our eyes, we'll be safe on shore with a lighter weight, a more happy shadow, and a lot of new magic and excitement in our hearts, ready to burst and make new changes and mourn the old. There's anything the eclipse is good at, it's fresh starts, new beginnings, and ending what no longer serves us on this journey anymore. And I think that's it for me. Honestly, I got through everything I wanted to talk about. Good luck to all of you this lunation. I am rooting for you. I hope that you have an illuminating eclipse season, a bubbly, cute, and delightful Samhain, and a comfortable flow in between all of the wild shifts happening this month. I feel like there's a lot of little moving pieces that are clicking into place right now. And although we're about to close in on the end of this year and wrap up those loose ends as well, that just comes with a year ending, I hope that we can still create time and energy to celebrate the magic of autumn. I also just love eclipse season during autumn, when death is thick in the air and mushrooms are scheming more than ever, just like we will. apparently. Just really honoring the dark and subtle magics of eclipse season during the dark and subtle times of autumn. It's all very magical. It's all very compelling. But thank you again for listening. I do want to talk about next episode real quick. I will be releasing this next episode. I'm not entirely sure yet. It'll either be the 30th or 31st of October. So you'll either get that the day before Samhain or on Samhain, depending upon a few different things. If you want to keep updated with that, you can check out the Oddcast hub page at phasey.love/oddcast. It'll show and say when the next episode is. And eventually I'll get an answer on that from myself. Once again, it's eclipse season. I'm keeping things a little loose, okay? And the last time I talked about my Samhain episode, we had something else planned, which was going to be a Celestial Cafe reunion episode. Unfortunately, that will not be happening due to me, honestly. I've just been pretty low spoons, and I'm not ready to host a group of people on my podcast quite yet. I'm also just enjoying, like, the baby step process of it being mostly me. However, I do think I'm going to be putting out another one-on-one interview pretty soon, so look forward to that. But instead, what I think we will be doing on Samhain is having a little tea party. I would love to do a tea leaf reading for you all and just talk about the intricacies of Halloween, some fun stuff. I don't know. I'm still working out the intricacies, the details of this episode, but I think we're gonna just do a little divination, chill out, talk about tarot, magic, spells, Samhain, and just have a good time. Nothing too deep. So thank you all again for listening. I am looking forward to embodying and embracing this eclipse season alongside all of you. We'll probably also reflect upon what's happened thus far in the Samhain episode. Thank you all for tuning in. I just wanted to say as well, if you've listened this far in, I figure I'd give you a little update on the state of the Oddcast, which is we just recently hit 200 listens on all podcasting platforms, and we just hit 50 subscribers on YouTube. So I wanted to say thank you all for supporting me. And for those who received the newsletter this week, you guys got a sneak peek of my new Samhain offering. So I hope you enjoy that. And if you too want to get sneak peeks and early access to my personal phasey.love readings, then you should definitely sign up for the newsletter, which is on the homepage of my website, which is phasey.love. All my beloved Whimsy Mail recipients got first come, first serve and a discount to my new Samhain reading. Maybe one day you will too. Okay, that's it from me. Once again, I'm Doogsley. Thank you for tuning in. I had so much fun preparing this episode and talking about eclipses, and I hope you'll stick around for next episode right around Halloween. It should be rather haunting. No, it won't. It's going to be really cute, as usual. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. Bye.